Greg, thank you. Right now, it is time for Financial Focus. My guest this midday, Steve Budin. Steve, good to see you.
You too.
Happy belated Father's Day.
Thank you very much.
Was it a great weekend?
It was.
Good.
Too short.
Yeah, always too short.
Yep.
But thanks for being here.
Sure.
Financial Focus today, the first point we're going to talk about got me a little confused this morning because I told you I can't keep up. It goes back and forth. Do they or do they not have a deal in Greece?
Yeah, and here's the last time we will bring this up until there is some sort of resolution. And I've been talking about this the last couple of years that Greece, who's in a whole bunch of financial turmoil because they owe the other European nations a lot of money, and now they're threatening to default. And they're trying to figure out a way to resolve the issue because the world economies are afraid that it could lead to more trouble down the line. Now, over the weekend, I mentioned last week that June 30th was a big deadline. Now, over the weekend, Greece said that they would be willing to soften their stance, and the Europeans came back and said, okay, let's have an offer. That's where they are right now. So there's no deal yet, but the turmoil in the financial markets is really why I bring this up. But again, until there's some more definitive response, we'll stop talking about this. But the American stock market today, for example, started up open. The European stock markets were open and up a lot. And now they're beginning to come back down because nobody really knows. Like you said, there's no resolution. So I say they kick the can down the road. At some point, the math catches up with Greece. I don't know when that is, but we will certainly keep an eye on it. But I officially will stop talking about this until something happens.
We don't mind you talking about it. It's certainly interesting. Something, though, that is definitive is home sales are up.
Great report out this morning. Existing home sales, the highest they've been since 2009. So we have some great reports, and earlier in the year, if you remember, because of the bad weather, home sales were down. So I think a lot of this is part of catch-up, but an interesting point, too, the last couple of weeks, mortgage rates have begun to tick up. And I really believe that a lot of buyers who may have been on the fence have been listening to their realtors or mortgage brokers saying, now may not be a bad time to lock in the price of your mortgage because rates may or may not go up, but that's the trend. So it's interesting. When you see a little bit of interest rate inflation, it gets people to act.
Well, home sales are up, but so are egg prices.
Yes, and again, an inflation story here. A lot of folks, you throw a dozen eggs in your shopping cart, you may not pay attention to the price that much, but there's been some bird flu out in the Midwest, and this article caught my eye because it's interesting how we measure inflation. The average price of a dozen eggs is about $2. If you've been to one of the stores recently, it's over $2.50. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but in percentage terms, that's over 20%.
Sure.
Now, if a home went up 20%, you'd notice, or if a car price went up 20%, you'd notice. So when the government releases inflation numbers, sometimes you have to take a step back and realize what actually is going up. So for egg prices to go up, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see restaurants, A, begin to take things off the menu, or B, have some surcharges because of the price of eggs. The government, when they release their inflation numbers, needs to be a little bit more specific in how they're determining which items are going up in price, because a 50-cent increase in a dozen eggs may or may not make or break the budgets of most people, but if a home goes up 20%, that's a big deal. Sure,
but to your point, we have had some reports of some restaurants around the nation pulling items off their menu that are egg-based. Certainly a lot of breakfast locations having a tough time with this news. And as you mentioned, this is something that everyone feels because most people do buy eggs at the store. Yeah,
and again, it's one of those items that you throw in the basket and you don't pay attention to the price, right? But if it gets high enough and you go into a restaurant, maybe an $8 or $9 omelet is now going to be $10, or you may not even be able to get it. So again, I bring it up because the inflation calculations can be a little bit misleading. If you read in the paper, egg prices are up 20%, well, it may just be only 50 cents, but it's a large number in percentage terms.
Steve, thanks.
Sure.
Good to see you. Again, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Hey, trouble is